Hello, my name is Robert Trujillo. I play in the band Metallica, and we have a wonderful, I don't know, I guess you could call it an event, a party, a function, a social function called Lollapalooza here in one of my favorite cities in the whole world, Chicago, and it's awesome. It's incredible. It's not rained yet today, so I feel lucky, and we're here to have a good time. I have this documentary film that I've been working on for nearly 6 years. It's about my favorite bass player, one of my favorite musicians on the planet. His name is Jaco Pastorius. And I had the good fortune of seeing Jaco Pastorius perform back in 1979, a little bit through the early 80s. And at some point, I got involved in making a film about Jaco, a documentary film. So for me, it was really just about the passion and the love for his sense of composition, his edge and attitude, and what he brought to the stage, as well as to the instrument. And then the story is just so incredible. I know over the years, lots of people tried to make this film, and I was fortunate to be able to get involved. I've been friends with Jaco Pastorius' son since 1996, Johnny Pastorius, the eldest son. And I remember when I first met him, I said, someday you got to make a film about your father, because his influence is so broad. I mean, I know so many musicians that are actually, you know, funk players or rock players, gospel musicians, jazz, that are influenced by Jaco. And you know, so it's not one-dimensional. It's really very wide and broad, and you know, it's just great to be able to reach out to a lot of various types of legendary jazz players as well as rock players, jazz players like Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter, and as well as Geddy Lee and Sting, and then, you know, Flea, and many others. So, you know, I feel that this project has been a grassroots journey, a very mom and pop, so to speak, and we've had a lot of challenges along the way, and to be where we are now, you know, almost ready to release this, it's very special and also very rewarding. So it's been quite a journey for me. Well, what I'd like to share is when I saw Jaco Pastorius for the first time. Initially, I had started playing bass a little later, meaning probably around 16 years old. But before that, I was always a fan of music. And my parents were young enough to have a lot of different hip styles of music in the household. So I grew up with my mom dancing to James Brown and, you know, Motown, and there was a lot of funk and R&B back then in the house. But then there was also a lot of Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin. And so really there was just a lot of different styles of music around me. So I was like a sponge kind of soaking it all up. And at a certain point, I realized that bass was what was driving me. You know, that was the instrument that I was listening to, the bass and the drums, you know, more than the guitar. And even the vocals sometimes. So I started hearing about this bass player that went by 4 letters, Jaco, and I was like, wow, who is this guy? And it was before the internet age, you know. You really had to go and buy the record, you know. And if you were lucky, maybe you catch something on Don Kirshner's rock concert or something, which is very rare for especially a fusion band, though fusion was big at the time. So I actually had to physically go see Weather Report in 1979 at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, which was a block away from the beach. So I grew up by the ocean. I was born in Santa Monica, and it was great to hear about this guy and how amazing he was, and actually to hear Teen Town for the first time, or Birdland. But then when I saw Jaco, it was next level, because I'd never seen the bass played like that or sound like that. It reminded me of when I first heard Eddie Van Halen and I heard Eruption. It was like, what is that? What instrument is that? But then how Jaco sort of controlled the environment in the room, and how many different types of people were there was really special. And then he looked like a beach bum like me and my friends. So not only is he ripping on bass and dominating the performance, he was also like one of our older kind of, like kind of the guys we looked up to in the neighborhood. So he was just super cool all across the board. And that was my first encounter with him. I saw him play a few times after that, and actually had an encounter with him in 1985. So, it's special for me in a lot of ways, because it's not only a guy that I grew up listening to his music, but also who inspired us with the level of performance and stage presence. And so it was coming from a lot of different directions, and I can identify with characters like him too, from where I grew up. He reminded me of the skateboarders, a lot of the heavy skateboarders from the neighborhood. Back in the early 90s, I had a band called the Infectious Grooves, and I was playing in Suicidal Tendencies at the time, but my lead singer, Mike Muir, and I started this offshoot, really a funk band, but at the same time it was just this wild experiment. And I can honestly say, and we had 3 albums out at the time. We were on Epic Records, and I can honestly say, from my end, and I was the main writer on all the stuff instrumentally. Jaco was my main influence on that music. We had elements of jazz in there. We had a lot of different ingredients, and it all was sort of centered around the bass. The bass was the primary instrument. But I was pulling from Jaco's techniques more than anything. I wasn't sitting there learning Teen Town or Portrait of Tracy. And I was younger, so it was really difficult to take that on, But I always felt that Jaco's message, even way back in the day, was, you learn from those who inspire you, and then those who inspire you should give you the tools and help you to be creative and to write. And there are no rules or boundaries with style. So I basically just wrote a whole bunch of songs around what I thought the technique or the feel or the vibe was that Jaco was feeding me or giving me at the time, as well as some other players too that I was influenced by. But I would say he was probably the main influence, with some Larry Graham in that mix too, because I love Sly and the Family Stone and Graham Central Station. But at that age, there's no rules, and with Jaco there were no rules. So it was great. It was a great time in my life to be creative and to explore the bass, harmonics. He had a really interesting tone. Some of the fretless work that I had done back then, even with Suicidal. I remember on there's a song called Lights, Camera, Revolution, a song called You Can't Bring Me Down. In the intro, I did a little fretless thing there, and that was completely Jaco inspired. So he was even there with me at that time. Yeah, so yeah, again, you pull from your influences, and you're inspired by that, and you create. That's what it's all about. I have a lot of greatest bass players in the whole world. So I always say that, Geezer Butler, greatest bass player in the whole world. Stanley Clarke, greatest bass player in the whole world. Chris Squires. Right now, Pino Palladino is one of the greatest bass players in the whole world. But Jaco, I think for all of us, even those guys have to love and respect Jaco and what he did for music, what he did for the instrument, We're all a part of the same club and the same family, The best is very wide and broad. One of the things that I learned in general about people, and more importantly about people that may be bipolar or may have other situations in their lives that would cause certain complications. I recently, through the Saint Anthony Society and various organizations, I've handed out food, and I've been a part of that, and that's something that I want to do in the future. I feel that everybody has a story, and sometimes, you see somebody who's maybe living on the street, and there's something else going on there a lot of the times. It's not always sort of drugs and alcohol or anything like that. There's other things, and it's important to understand that. You know, so for me, I've learned a lot about people, and to try to have a better understanding and be less judgmental. You know, I think that's important. The other thing too is I also realize that even in life, when times are difficult, or your back may be against the wall, or you know you're struggling with something, it's good to have a sense of humor. And Jaco had an amazing sense of humor. I think that's important. Try and keep people smiling and keep yourself smiling. And if anything, even if it's just for a half hour or 15 minutes of your life or whatever, you know, it really helps. It helps bring a little bit light into that universe and that world. And Jaco was always trying to keep the smile and make other people happy too. And I think that was a great quality in him. One of the things with this film, along this journey, it's like, you know, it's going to be almost 6 years when we get to, I think maybe around January, December. And every year even within a year, there was a new treasure. So we had to re-edit. You know, Joni Mitchell came on board about a half year ago. Jerry Jamont, who is Jaco's favorite electric bass player, he came on board about 2 years ago. And it's a blessing, but at the same time, you got to re-edit, you know. So I don't want to say it's a curse, but it can be a little bit. But that's okay, because it's a beautiful curse. So a lot of you know, re-edits and rewrites and everything. But again, there's no way you can make a film like this without having the time and taking the time to be creative and to try and be as true as you can to what it's all about in the story. Again, it's passion driven. The other thing too is documentary films are very expensive to make, films of quality. And you know, I've spent obviously a lot of time and also money on this wonderful project. So those are things that people need to understand, because I know there's been a lot of people that have probably got impatient with us in our process and everything like that. But it takes a while, you know. It's like we had a pledge campaign and people going, "Where's my DVD?" And it's like, well, we got to finish the movie. It's like, you know, it's like, let us finish the film. And but what I can honestly say, we're going to be getting Jaco out to the world in early November, and we are very excited. We also have a very special event at the Hollywood Bowl on August 12th. So Vince Mendoza Big Band will be performing and celebrating Jaco Pastorius' music. You got Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter, Robert Trujillo, Peter Erskine, Alex Acuna. I mean, Will Lee's playing, you know, and some other very special guests. So I'm just so happy if I can help be part of that step forward to bringing awareness to the world for Jaco. I'm stoked. I'm excited, because for me, hopefully this will continue and the journey will continue. Hey there, Robert Trujillo, and this is Grammy Pro. Yeah.